So in this second video here, we're going to talk about types of print statements, and then we're actually going to run our program in Java itself. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump right off the bat, and we're going to create a new folder in Java. So I want you to go to Replit if you can. Go to Replit, and we're going to go to our Java 1 Unit 1 file folder, and then we're going to create a new file. So we're going to type in that we want to use Java. We're going to use regular Java. And we're going to title this Java Unit 1 Lesson 2 Print Statements, because this is where we're going to actually program and test out print statements. So if we create our Replit here, it's going to create that normal folder that it always starts with the main Java class. And we're going to, I like to enter down that bracket so I can see the beginning and end of those brackets pretty easily. And then I'm going to delete out this print statement for now. So we open it up, we can see the name of our folder, and we delete that print statement out of our main function. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add in the file that we actually want to code in. So we're going to click New File. We're going to call this print statements.java. That's what I'm going to call this particular file. So I've created it. We can see it's in a separate file here, and we're going to put in our generic beginning statements, starting with our class heading. So we have public class print statements. That's the beginning of our class. We're going to put our beginning and ending brackets, and if we press enter, it'll pop it out and indent it nicely for us. Then the next line of code that we need to write is public static void main string with the little rectangular brackets and the word args. And then again, we have curly brackets to start and end. And if we press enter, it'll kind of pop them out and indent them for us. So I've got my generic print statements file ready to go now. So I have my public class and the name of my file. I make sure that the name of my class is the same as the name of my class file here. And then I have public static void main string args to create that main method that's going to run the executable code of my program. Now remember that if we want our program to run, we now have to go back to the main.java file, and we're going to add in that line of code that will actually run the file. So we have print statements, which is the name of our class here, dot, and then it's just main with args on the inside, and now it will run. So we now have this all set up to code. And now we're going to learn a little bit about print statements so that we can actually print to the screen. So in Java, you have two print statement options that you can use. So you can see them both written here in purple. They are very, very similar and just ever so slightly different. So here you can see we have system.out.print, and then you would type whatever you want in quotation marks here inside these parentheses, end with a semicolon, and it'll print out to the screen. It will print exactly what you typed inside of the quotations, and it will print it to the screen as is. Now, the only difference down here with this second one is that it has print and then it has ln afterwards. So the addition of that ln means it's going to print what's inside of the parentheses there in double quotes. However, because of that little text ln, it's actually going to put an enter and move the cursor down to the next line. So if you want the cursor to make an enter sign after your print statement, you need to include the ln. If you don't want it to do that, you don't include the ln. But if you do, you include the ln, and then it'll put that enter sign in there for you. So to kind of see this in action, we're going to do a little bit of coding here, and we're going to type out some print statements. So let's type out our first one. It says system.out.println. I'm going to type inside of my double quotes, hello world. Now, remember, Java requires any, non-bracket related line of code. So something that's not a conditional, not a loop, not a class heading, not a method heading, you need to put a semicolon at the end of each line. If you forget that semicolon, you will encounter an error. So this one, we use the print ln. This next line, I'm just going to use regular print just to kind of compare, and I'll do my name is Sarah, and then put my semicolon at the end. And then this next line, we're going to do system.out.print with a ln again. And go, how did this print? So now, in order to run our programs, we simply need to click run. However, I want to warn you that in other editors, it's not quite this easy. Oftentimes, you have to compile the program and then have your program look for errors first and then run it separately. So you'll have to do two things. What you're going to notice here when we press the print button or that run button is it's going to compile. You'll see it thinking on the side, and then it will automatically run your program. So you can see it's thinking, it's compiling, it's doing its thing. If we typed it incorrectly, it will print. So here we can see hello world. It did a print ln or print line. So it did the enter sign after our code. And then it said just a print statement. So it didn't do an enter sign here. And then it did the other ones, and it would then do an enter sign after that question mark there. So you can see how easy it was to run in Replit. Just keep in mind that if you use another editor, you will have to compile your program to find all of the errors, and then you will have to run it. So next thing we're going to look at is we're going to add more print statements here so we can kind of see what they do. Now, I want to add some spaces in here so I can actually see my different chunks of code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do system.out.print ln, and I'm going to make it blank. And I'm going to see what happens when I do that. And if I let my program run, what I notice is it actually puts a blank line. So I'm going to add that print ln in there just to space my code out so that I can actually see what it's doing with each of the ones that I add in. So the next one I'm going to add in is system.out.print ln. And I'm going to do 3 separate quotations. I'm going to see what happens when I run this with 3 separate quotations. So here I can see I have hello in quotes plus my name is in quotes plus Sarah. And if I run this, what I notice is that if I use plus signs here, those plus signs concatenate or add together these strings. Now, what's very, very interesting here is that these plus signs do not add spaces into my program. They quite literally smush things together in the quotes exactly as is. So if you want to add in spaces, you have to add them in somewhere. So here I could add one in here and add one in here. And if I do that, my program should space itself out, and that looks a lot better. So make sure that you add spaces in as needed, because if you don't, Java's not going to add them in for you. So now we have system.out.print. We'll do another print ln, and I'm going to do 5 plus 11 without quotes. And then I'm going to do, and don't forget your semicolon there. And then I'm going to do 5 plus 11 with quotes. So notice the differences here in the 2 different lines. Notice how these do not have quotes and they're green. These do have quotes and they're orange. And if I compile those programs and I run them, you'll notice here, I forgot a semicolon. So my compiler caught that and is telling me that. So now I'm going to add in my semicolon and I'm going to run it again. And I'm going to hope that I did everything correctly. And there I can see I get hello, my name is Sarah, like I did on this line. But what I noticed that's really interesting is that the use of quotes with numbers is really important. So here I can see that when I didn't use quotations, it added the numbers as is, like it would in math class. 5 plus 11 is 16. However, when they're inside of quotes, it prints things exactly literally, which is really interesting to me that it does that. So keeping in mind that quotations do something very specific. Now, I'm going to try one more thing that is kind of an interesting little tidbit to know about print statement. So it's going to be your total is, and then I'm going to do plus 5 plus 11 like that. And then don't forget my semicolon there. And I'm going to do system.out.println, and we're going to do your total is colon again, but now we're going to do plus, and I'm going to put 5 plus 11 in quotations. And we need to end with a semicolon and run. So let's see what happens. Now, what I find really interesting about this code is I expected them both to say 16 because I can see that these numbers here are in green. So I expected them to act like these numbers. However, what's interesting about print statements is that the placement of numbers and where strings are compared to numbers matters. So here, because this calculation was the only thing in here, it acted like math, and it did the math, and it added them and then printed it to the screen. What's happening here is that this is already starting to print a string. And so order of operations, unless there's parentheses, moves left to right. So here what's happening is it's printing this string, printing this string, printing this string, and then it encounters this plus sign. Because the string was first and there's no other parentheses in there to tell the program to do something different, when it gets to this plus sign and it sees this 5, it's going to add your total is with the 5. It doesn't know that the 11 plus 11 is there yet. It's just looking at this portion. And it says, oh, well, I can see that we are having a string added with a number. Because I have a string added with a number, I'm going to turn that 5 into a string. So it will automatically turn it into a string. So it says your total is 5. Well, now that's a string, and then when it gets to the plus 11, the 11 also becomes a string. Now, the reason that this one actually prints a 16 is because of these parentheses. So what happens is that the order of operations are followed in a statement where they can be applied. So here, if you see that we have parentheses around 5 plus 11, it's going to do the 5 plus 11 before it adds it to this string here, which is why it actually does the math first and then tacks the 16 in there. So pay close attention to parentheses as well. If you have a set of parentheses, it will do the calculation before it adds it with a string. However, if it's going left to right and it does a string added with a number, it's going to automatically turn it into a string, and it's going to print out, like in this case, 511 instead. Now, we've got a couple of more things we want to look at with print statements just so we are aware. But I want to add a break in here so that I can focus on a new topic. So I have system.out.println. I'm going to do a blank statement there. And then here I'm going to type out my two statements. So I have system.out.println, and I have hello world. I'm going to use a backslash, which is above the enter sign, n plus, we will just do my name is backslash n Sarah. And we'll see what happens. So let's see what adding those backslash n's does in this code. Oh, and we see we forgot a semicolon again. The program caught that, so we're going to add that in and run it again. And we can see that we have one more error. You can see that it's saying something went wrong in this particular line. Well, you can see I forgot my dot. So you can see where the syntax rules in Java are really important. You make little errors, and you're going to have to find them and fix them before the compiler will let you run your program. And here you can see we even have one more. I was missing the T in print. So good debugging there, just looking at those little syntax errors that we need to be aware of. So if I look down here, these are my new print statements here, and I see hello world. And then I see that this backslash n is not appearing. it's actually not appearing in my code. But instead what happened is that my code had an enter sign, then seems to have a space sign, and then it types my name is. And then it gets to is, and it seems to have another symbol that didn't appear, and that \n again did an enter sign. So this little symbol right here, this \n, if you put it inside of quotes in a print statement, will print a new line. So it's a different fancy way to make things enter down to a new line. Now, if you don't like the extra spaces, remember that the quotes print everything exactly. So if we kind of back those up and put them right next to the \n, the program knows that \n is an enter sign. So you don't have to have a space after it. It just knows if it sees \n to press enter. So we can see that we got all of those to line up. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line of code. So I'm going to try that one more time. Copy. And I'm going to change those N's to be T's. And let's see what happens instead. So notice, same code, but the T's do something a little bit different. So here you can see that the T's tab it over. So just cute little clauses there that you can add into your printing if you want to do enters and tabs and those types of things directly in your code. So a couple of important items to note that we have some extra notes on here. You want to be really careful about which print statement you're using so that you know how it will print. So that pretty much means you're using print or println, and you want to know which one you're using and why. The next thing is that no spaces are automatically added into the print statements. We need to include them in parentheses if we want them. So what this also includes is if we want to add anything with like spaces around numbers, we have to add a plus sign and then like a space in quotes if we want to space things out a little bit. The plus sign is what concatenates items together in the print statement. It's our only option with the print statement in Java. And then numbers behave differently in print statements depending on their location and the order of operations. So we saw that in a couple of different statements. And then these clauses with the \t and \n allow us to create tabs and enters in our print statements if we don't want to have to actually put multiple print lines instead. So last thing I want to talk about is what do the words in those print statements mean? So this is just an example print statement here. So the word system is actually the class that we need to access. So printing is a built-in method that we can access, and we do so by using the system class. And this is a class that's already been created and can be accessed by our program. So it goes into the system class, and then the out means that it's going to print to the terminal. That's what that word out means. Then print is the actual method contained in the system class that we're accessing. And these dots are how we're accessing them. So this is kind of the path we have to follow to get to this print method here. And then the print method takes in one parameter, which we can see right here as, the different pieces that need to be printed to the screen. So just keeping that in mind, that's what's actually happening when we use system.out.print or system.out.println.